Hello everyone, welcome to another First Chapter Friday. Today I will be reading one of my favorite horrors, which is about zombies in England. And it is Charlie Higson's The Enemy series. It does have, I think it's like 7 books in total. And the first book is The Enemy. However, the second book is called The Dead, and that is actually a prequel to The Enemy. You can read it in any order, either start with The Enemy or start with the prequel, The Dead, and it will make great sense to you. I'm going to read 2 chapters, and then I will join you after, and you can read along. Okay. Charlie Higson, The Enemy. Map of London, in particular, the Waitrose crew, Small Sam's path, and Sophie's crew. Chapter 1. Small Sam was playing in the parking lot behind the Waitrose supermarket when the grown-ups took him. He'd been with some of the little kids, having a battle with an odd assortment of action figures when it happened. They weren't supposed to play outside without a guard, but it was a lovely sunny day, and the little kids got bored indoors. Sam wasn't the youngest of the group, but he was the smallest. That's why they called him Small Sam. There had originally been 2 other Sams, Big Sam and Curly Sam, who had curly hair. Big Sam had been killed a few months ago, but Small Sam was stuck with the name. It was probably because of his size that the grown-ups went for him. They were like that. They picked out the youngsters, the weaklings, the little ones. In the panic of the attack, the rest of Sam's gang got back safely inside, but Sam was cut off, and the roving pack of grown-ups trapped him in a corner. They had come over the sidewall, led by a big mother in a tracksuit that might once have been pink, but was now so filthy and greasy it looked like gray plastic. She had a fat, egg-like body on top of long, skinny legs. Her back was bent, and she ran stooped over, but surprisingly fast. Her arms held wide like scorpions' claws, her dirty blonde hair hanging straight down, her face blank and stupid, breathing through her mouth. Small Sam was too scared to even scream or call for help, and the grown-ups made no noise, so the whole scene was played out in a horrible silence. The mother blocked off the route back toward the building, while 2 lanky fathers ran at him from either side. Sam dodged them for a few seconds, but he knew they'd get a hold of him in the end. By the time help came from inside, the grown-ups had gone back over the wall, with Sam stuffed inside a sack. Maxie led a group of bigger kids out into the parking lot. Even though they were armed with spears and clubs and good throwing rocks, they moved cautiously, not knowing exactly what to expect. "We're too late," said Caleb, scanning the empty parking lot. "They've got 'em." "Shame," said the stocky, dark-haired kid called Josh. "I liked him. He was funny." "That's the second attack this week," said Max angrily. "What's going on? Either grown-ups are closing in on us, or they're getting braver." "They ain't braver," said Josh, spitting on the ground. "If they was still here, I'd show them brave. I'd mash their ugly faces. Nothing scares me." "So why were they here?" asked Maxie. "They're just hungry," said Josh. "We're all hungry," said Caleb. "We should have been here," said Maxie. "We should have been watching over them." "We can't be everywhere at once," Caleb pointed out. "There's not enough of us, not with Aaron out on the scavs. Our job's to keep a lookout from the roof. The little kids knew they weren't supposed to be out here. Nobody should be out here. We should all stay inside." "We can't stay inside all day," scoffed Josh. we'd go crazy. It's good inside, said Caleb. You're just scared to come outside, said Josh with a smirk. Nah, I ain't, said Caleb. No more scared than you. Nothing scares me, said Josh. Then you're just stupid, said Caleb. Nah, said Josh. The thing about grown-ups is some of them are strong, some of them can run fast, and some of them are clever. But the strong ones are slow, the fast ones are stupid, and the smart ones are weak. Tell that to small Sam, said Max angrily. And to Big Sam and Jono and Eve and Muhammad and all the other kids we've lost. Grown-ups won't get me, said Josh. What? Said Caleb. So it was their fault they got taken? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I am, said Josh. Oh, shut up, Maxie snapped at the two of them. Then she said the thing that nobody wanted to admit. We can't go on like this. Her voice was heavy with bitterness. Soon we're all going to be dead. I can't stand it anymore. She threw down the spear she had been carrying and sat on the ground, resting her head in her hands. It was her fault. That's all she could think. It was all her fault. When Aaron was away, she was supposed to be in charge. She couldn't remember when that had been decided. Aaron was the leader. She was second in command. It must have happened early on when most of the kids had been too frightened and confused to do anything for themselves. Aaron and Maxie had just got on with it, organizing everyone, keeping their spirits up. Aaron was clever and likable. Right from the start, he'd kept his head and not panicked. He'd been the captain of the soccer team at William Ellis School, and nothing ever seemed to freak him out. The two of them had worked together, a team. Maxie had always been good at getting other children to help out. There were better fighters than her, true, but they were happy for her to tell them what to do. They didn't want the responsibility. And when Aaron wasn't there, she was the leader. So it was all her fault. Another kid gone. She shut down part of her mind. She didn't want to think about what the grown-ups would do to small Sam. She started to cry, and she didn't care who saw it. Caleb looked at Josh. They both felt awkward. In the end, it was Josh who squatted down next to her and put an arm around her shoulders. It's all right, Max, he said quietly. We'll be all right. Something'll happen. Someone will come. Something's gonna change. When Aaron and the others get back, we'll talk about it maybe, yeah? Make a plan? What's the point? Said Maxie. When Aaron gets back, yeah? Maxie looked up into Josh's concerned, grubby face. Sorry, she said. Come on, said Caleb. Let's try to find out how they got over the wall, and then we should get back inside. Yeah, Maxie jumped up. It was okay as long as you were doing something, as long as you didn't stop and think. She wished Aaron were here, though. She always felt safer when he was around. It was just, what was he going to think? Another kid gone. All her fault. Chapter 2. Alberto was lying in the middle of the road, a father by the looks of it, though it was hard to tell. He had the familiar look of a vegetable or a piece of fruit left too long in the sun. The skin blackened, shriveled, and split, the overripe flesh inside squeezing out. His insides had turned to mush. This is what happened if any grown-up lived long enough to let the disease run its full course. They literally burst. Aaron prodded the body with his sneaker. As he did so, the skin popped, and a stream of pus oozed out, followed by a bright pink blossom of soft fat. Aaron was leading the scavenger party. Tall, fair-haired, and athletic, he had a knife in his belt, and he carried a pickaxe handle as a club. Gross, snickered the boy at his side, who had a shock of curly hair bleached almost white. Come on, we don't have time for this. Aaron turned his back on the corpse and continued up Holloway Road. When the disaster first happened, the kids had been appalled and fascinated by the dead bodies. Now they were so used to them, they hardly even noticed them. A burster, though, was still a little special. The scavenger party took up their positions with Aaron and trudged on. They hadn't gone another 100 yards, however, before the bleach-haired boy Deke slowed down. What's that? They stopped and listened. Dogs, said another boy, and he moved to the front. He was shorter than Aaron and not as strong. He had proved time and time again, though, that fighting was not all about strength. Aaron was the leader, but Achilles was the best fighter of them all. With a wiry build, dark eyes, and olive skin, he spent most of his spare time shaving elaborate patterns in his short hair. He could be moody and sarcastic, and quick to lose his temper, but nobody much minded because he'd saved them all many times with his combat skills. He moved fast, used his brain, and was utterly ruthless in a fight. They waited. They could hear the dogs long before they saw them, a cacophony of howling, yelping, and barking. All jumbled together, it sounded like a single mad beast. Achilles leveled his spear, pointing it toward the noise. It was made from a metal spike he'd found on a building site. It had a heavy lump at one end, and he'd sharpened the other into a vicious point. It was perfect for keeping grown-ups at bay. He could stab them with the front and use the back end to batter them. It was definitely not for throwing. Too precious for that. Aaron took up a defensive position behind him, next to Freak and Deke. Freak and Deke were a team, best mates. Before the disaster, they had taken to the streets armed only with spray cans. Their tag was Freaky Deaky, and it could be seen all over Tufnell Park and Camden Town, sprayed on walls and shutters, stenciled onto the sidewalks, scratched onto glass in bus shelters. They knew all the back ways, all the alleys, and shortcuts. Freak, whose real name was David, had close-cropped hair and a thin, pinched face. He was always sniffing. Deke was the bigger of the two. He was good-looking and would have been popular with the girls if he hadn't spent all his time with Freak. The two were inseparable, always finishing each other's sentences and laughing at each other's jokes. Freak carried an axe and Deke a sledgehammer. They were mainly for knocking down doors and opening windows, although, if needed, they could be used as weapons. The last one in the group was Ollie, small and red-haired, the cleverest of them all. He had sharp eyes and could think quickly. He kept himself to himself, and most of the time he kept quiet. But when he did speak, people listened. Aaron would often ask Ollie for advice, and it was never seen as a weakness. Ollie always knew the best thing to do. As the barking of the dogs grew louder, Ollie stepped back into one side, keeping a clear line of sight. His weapon was a slingshot that he had taken from a sports shop. It was a powerful hunter's model with a pistol grip and a metal brace that fitted over his forearm. He drew the rubber band back and tucked a heavy steel ball into the worn leather pouch. Whenever the kids were outside of camp, they traveled in groups of at least 4, 1 to look ahead and lead the way, 2 to check the sides, and 1 to watch their backs. But as Freak and Deke always worked together, there were 5 of them today. They had learned early on to move down the middle of the roads rather than to stay out of sight among the buildings along the sides. Grown-ups could hide in the shadows and grab you from the darkness. They weren't such a threat in the open because, on the whole, they didn't move fast enough. The biggest danger was if you got surrounded. In a mass, the grown-ups were a real threat, bigger and heavier than the kids, and diseased. Grown-ups were rarely organized enough to plan any real strategy, though, and for the most part, they came lumbering out in a pack from the side. Then the best thing to do was run. Anything to avoid a fight. Dogs were different, however, unpredictable and dangerous. "Are they coming our way?" said Freak, scratching his stubbly head. "I think so," said Ollie, his slingshot creaking. "Let 'em," said Achilles. "I'm ready." "It gets more dangerous every time we come out," said Aaron. "Tell me about it," said Deke, nervously twisting his sledgehammer in his hand. Then the first of the dogs appeared, a skinny mongrel with one eye. It bowled out into the street, fell over, wriggled on the ground, then lay on its back in surrender. A second dog was hard on its tail, a dirty pit bull. It had evidently been chasing the mongrel because it came at him with teeth bared and hackles raised. There was almost a comical moment when the two dogs realized that they had an audience. They both did a double take and looked at the boys in surprise. The rest of the pack came into view at almost the same time, howling and barking. They skidded to a halt, and a couple of them knocked into the pit bull, who turned and snapped at them. The little mongrel saw its moment and scurried off. The pit bull stood there, sniffing the air. The other dogs were a mismatched mob, with missing fur and diseased eyes caked with pus. Some were limping, some wounded. One sat down in the road and vigorously scratched its ear until another dog bit it, and it scampered away. The pit bull strutted forward, growling. Then it started to bark at the boys, and the rest of the pack joined in. Instantly, the street was filled with their racket. "Will they attack, do you think?" asked Freak. "Depends how hungry they are," said Aaron. "They look pretty hungry to me," said Deke. Then he gripped his sledgehammer tighter. "Try to scare them off," said Aaron, and the boys now made a racket of their own, yelling, screaming, and waving their arms. Some of the dogs backed off, but the bolder ones were soon inching closer. The big pit bull shook its head and nosed ahead, his claws scratching on the asphalt. "Take him out," said Aaron. "He's the boss. Maybe the others will get the message." Ollie loosed his shot. The steel ball hit the dog squarely in the forehead. His legs crumbled, and he went down without a sound. The other dogs sniffed him, and one or two set up howling. Then a big German shepherd ran from the back of the pack, leading 3 other hounds with him. Achilles went down on one knee, and as the dog pounced, he stuck him through the chest with his spear. The followers veered off to the side, and Ollie hit one more with the steel ball, breaking its leg. It yelped and turned tail, dragging its leg behind. With a great war cry, the boys charged, and the rest of the dogs scattered. Ollie quickly searched the area for his ammunition. He found his second ball lying in the gutter. The first was stuck in the pit bull's head in a neat crease of broken bone. The 5 of them knelt by the dead body. "Can we risk eating it?" said Freak. "What's that parasite Maeve's always going on about? That worm thing you can catch from eating dog. Tricky something?" "Trichinosis," said Aaron. "He'll be all right if he's well cooked." "Yeah," said Deke. "We'll deep fry him in batter with some fries and a nice glass of wine. Delicious!" Freak giggled. "I know a gourmet recipe for fried dog." "We can't waste any food," said Aaron. "Some of the kids are already getting thin. Leave the German Shepherd, though. He's too big to carry, and his carcass might keep the pack busy." Achilles took out his knife and gutted the dead animal, leaving the purple-gray entrails in the road to further distract the other dogs. Then he tied the dog's legs together and with some nylon cord slung it over Aaron's shoulder. "Should we go back?" said Freak. "We need to find as much food as we can," said Aaron. "It's always a risk leaving camp. And it gets riskier every time. The dog's not enough for 20 of us." Every day, a scavenging party left the camp to look for supplies. They searched among the empty houses and apartments for abandoned cans, packages, and bottles. Each time, they had to start their search farther from Waitrose. All the buildings close by had long since been picked clean. Most days, they found nothing, but a lucky discovery could last them a long time. They knew it couldn't last, though. They'd already been through every accessible building within a mile of Waitrose, except around Crouch End, which had been destroyed in a fire, and up around Arsenal Soccer Stadium, where there was a large nest of grown-ups. Sooner or later, they would have to move camp. But where would they go? Aaron pushed his hair out of his eyes. His guts hurt. He didn't really feel hungry anymore, just sick and tired. He'd grown to hate these streets. The smell of them, the filth everywhere, the grass and the weeds pushing out of every crack, the constant fear chewing away at him. He had been happy at first when they'd made him leader, but then it slowly dawned on him that he was responsible for everyone else. If anything went wrong, he had to take the blame. That was why someone like Achilles, who could easily beat him in a fight, was happy not to be in charge. He could show off and suck up the praise, but when a tough decision had to be made, he would sit back, hold up his hands, and let Aaron sweat it out. It was a warm and sunny spring day. There was a real sense that summer wasn't far off. Normally, Aaron would have enjoyed the sunshine and warmth. In the past, he had always loved seeing the first green leaves coming out on the trees, as if the world were waking up. Now it just meant that the grown-ups were getting bolder. In the winter, they'd been too cold and feeble to be much danger, but the change in the weather seemed to give them new courage and strength. Their attacks were becoming more frequent, and they were hungrier than ever. The kids trudged up Holloway Road. It was full of memories for Aaron, eating at McDonald's, shopping with his mom, going to the movies. He tried to shut the memories out. They only made him feel worse. When they came to Archway, they moved more cautiously. There was a tube station here, a perfect hiding place for the grown-ups. "Which way?" said Deke. "Highgate Road," said Aaron. "We'll work out our way toward Whittington." "Ain't going to no hospital," said Achilles. "What's the problem?" "There won't be nothing in there," said Achilles. "Maybe drugs," said Ollie. "Paracetamol and antibiotics and that." "Doubt it," said Deke. "When everything kicked off, it would have been the first place to be looted." "We'll take a look anyway," said Aaron, "just in case. But let's try the houses here first." "Ain't going in no hospital," Achilles repeated. "What about the swimming pool, then?" said Freak. "What about it?" said Achilles. "Worth a look, eh?" "Why?" said Achilles. "You feel like taking a swim?" "Nah," said Freak, "but there was always a vending machine in there." "It never worked," said Achilles. "Always stole your money." "Worth a look," said Freak. "Think about it. Mars bars, chips, chewing gum." "Won't nothing be in there," said Achilles. "Not after all this time." "Listen," Freak insisted. "Far as we know, we and the Morrisons crew are the only kids around, and they never come up here. All I'm saying is we should look, okay? If we're looking in the Whittington, we should look at the pool as well. We searched everywhere. Ain't that right, Aaron? I suppose so, said Aaron. Waste of time, said Ollie. When have we ever found a vending machine with anything in it? You agree with me, don't you, Deke? Said Freak. He agrees with everything you say, Achilles scoffed. Try me. The world's flat, said Freak. Yeah, it is, said Deke. Penguins can fly, said Freak. Yes, they can, said Deke. I'm the greatest kid that ever walked the earth, said Freak. Yes, you are, said Deke. Ha, very funny, said Achilles. Icky is a jerk, said Freak. Yes, he is, said Deke. I think you made your point, said Aaron, trying not to smile. We'll take a look. Ollie sighed. This was a waste of time. What they needed was proper food, not junk. But Aaron had spoken, and he was their leader. Ollie shoved a hand into his jacket and rolled the heavy steel shot between his fingers. The cold hardness comforted him. He didn't like the idea of exploring the swimming pool. He was always scared on those hunts, and going into the unknown like this just made his heart race faster. Come on, said Aaron. Let's go. Searching the swimming pool is a genius idea, said Freak. Yes, it is, said Deke. Okay, so what is about to happen is very dramatic in the pool. I hope your imagination is good, and I am sure that the author would surpass what your imagination is expecting. So if you like horror, if you like the realism of what would it be like if children were stuck in an apocalypse filled with zombies, then check out The Enemy and all of its sequels. All right, happy reading and see you next Friday.